because he is bases himself upon the world from within.
Have you ever met a grown adult who still acts like a teenager and seems to never grow up? Yeah, we all have. Believe it or not, there is a whole behavioral science about this, and Carl Jung saw it coming. This is his final warning to the world, the man-child epidemic. Carl Jung introduced us to the idea of the puer aeternus, or eternal boy in English, or someone who never really grows up. These are people, mostly men, who avoid responsibility, chase excitement, and live in a fantasy where life should always be easy. However, Jung warned that staying stuck in this mindset leads to anxiety, depression, and self-sabotage. Building on his idea, his student Marie-Louise von France took this idea further, showing how this man-child pattern appears in myths, stories, and real life. So she explained that while these people may seem fun and full of potential, without facing reality, they stay trapped in a cycle of avoidance and frustration. For example, one of the best-known puer aeternus figures is Peter Pan. You've all probably heard of Peter Pan. He lives in Neverland, where he avoids adult responsibilities. Instead, he plays, fights imaginary battles, and surrounds himself with other children. In contrast, Wendy represents the mature, grounded side of life, offering responsibility and care, and Peter rejects it. This is exactly what Jung and Marie-Louise von France warned about. So, what does this mean? If you refuse to grow up, you stay stuck in an endless loop of fun and fantasy, but you never truly live.
They are not conscious of the fact that while they live a conscious life, all the time a myth is played in the unconscious, a myth that extends over centuries.
Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. In other words, people trapped in the eternal boy syndrome may believe they're just unlucky, when in reality, their own refusal to grow up is ruining their future. So, take a moment to think about this. How many people do you know who still live with their parents even though they are already in their 30s? Not because of financial hardship, but because it's easier? Or consider those who bounce from relationships or workplaces, quitting as soon as things get difficult. But there is one thing. The rise of social media, video games, and instant gratification has only made this problem worse. Instead of facing challenges, many escape into virtual worlds where they don't have to take responsibility for their own lives.
A mother recognizes an individuality of her child. And so if you observe carefully, you see the tremendous difference even in very small children.
This may seem amusing to some, but today we have a natality problem because of the growing number of men who avoid relationships entirely, choosing instead to spend their time in virtual realities or party nonstop. In this way, they reject commitment, responsibility, and personal growth, embracing distraction over growth. And while they might convince themselves that they're happy, deep down, there's often a sense of void in their lives. Jung believed that society plays a huge role in shaping the man-child mass issue. He pointed out that when a culture overprotects its children, shelters them from struggle, and discourages independence, it creates fragile adults. And this is something we're seeing more today than ever. Helicopter parenting, participation trophies, and a fear of letting kids fail have led to a generation that doesn't know how to handle a challenge. In addition to this, Carl Jung also spoke about the dangers of avoiding one's own shadow, the darker, repressed parts of our psyche. He famously said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul. But the man-child avoids discomfort at all costs. As a result, instead of facing failure, responsibility, or personal shortcomings, he escapes into distractions, addictions, and fantasy." What's even more interesting is how this epidemic is manifested in others around us. And instead of living adult life, these people would rather choose to be a burden for their parents. This dynamic is often seen in families with only one child. But why is that? Parents linger over the child for too long, even when they become a legal adult. And that, right there, interferes with the child's perception.
These peculiarities express themselves in every way. So first, the peculiarities express themselves in all childish activities, in the way how it plays, in the things it is interested in.
Take the workplace, for example. Employers are struggling to find employees who can handle stress, take charge, and commit to long-term goals. In personal lives, the story is similar. Many women express frustration over the lack of emotionally mature men ready to build stable and committed relationships. Imagine the setback. To make matters worse, anxiety and depression rates are on the rise. And it's safe to say it is mostly because of the lack of purpose and direction in people's lives. When pleasure is consistently prioritized over responsibility, entire societies begin to weaken. Now, here's the twist. It's not just about men. Remember, cases of the man-child syndrome have been recorded in women too, but studies reveal that men are disproportionately affected by this so-called epidemic more than women. Here in the modern world, we have all sorts of solutions for everything. But long before these modern fixes, Carl Jung was ahead of his time. He suggested a few practical steps as a solution to the man-child problem, and we're about to reveal them. So if you find yourself relating to this, you might want to take notes.
He is quite right, even if he says, oh, there's nothing but my fantasy, you know. And of course that is the introvert. And that the introvert is always afraid of the external world.
The first step, as Carl Jung often emphasized, is to face your own fears. He spoke deeply about the importance of confronting the shadow self, that hidden part of us we try to avoid. Because once you do this successfully, your fears about the outside world and people's opinions will no longer control you. And with that, a new possibility opens up, and you'll finally be free to create the life you've always wanted. From there, the next step is to take full responsibility. Stop blaming the world, your parents, or bad luck. Why? Because your life is in your hands and you are the only one in the driver's seat. And it's time to own that. Now comes a big one. Developing discipline. Something a man-child often lacks or simply ignores. But here's the truth. Without discipline, dreams stay dreams. This is why it's crucial to finally distinguish between what truly serves you and what simply holds you back. The next step is closely tied to the first. Seek purpose. When you identify your true self, your life goals will start to come into focus. Because the truth is, a life without meaning leads to stagnation. Jung believed that people need a higher purpose, something greater than themselves. And finally, perhaps the most uncomfortable step, embrace discomfort. Growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone. Stop running from the struggle, and instead, learn to endure, adapt, and grow because of it. If you follow the previous steps, you'll find this one will eventually become second nature, but you'll never truly know what you're capable of until you give it a try. Carl Jung's warning wasn't just philosophical, it was a call to action for future generations. Even today, we can see the impact of the man-child syndrome in various aspects of society, even in politics. But here's the good news. You can break free from the man-child label. However, still without courage, self-reflection, and the willingness to face life head-on, nothing will truly change. So now the choice is yours. Will you remain a mommy's boy for the rest of your life? Or will you carve out your own identity, like countless others who have stepped up and taken control? Because here's the thing, the man-child epidemic isn't just a personal issue, it's a societal one. Carl Jung believed that true growth comes from embracing responsibility, facing life's challenges, and integrating both our strengths and weaknesses. Sure, staying stuck in eternal boyhood might feel safe, but in reality it leads to stagnation, regret, and an unfulfilled life. So what can we take away from Carl Jung's final warning? If you see yourself in this, it's not too late. Break the cycle, step into responsibility, forge your own path. Because as Jung would say, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Drop your thoughts in the comments.